everyone. I'm Shannon Thomas. I'm the Executive Director of Community Bridges, and I'm also on the Committee for Montgomery Board of Directors. I have the pleasure this year of serving as the chair of the Breakfast Committee and to welcome all of you to the 33rd celebration of this special annual event. Now, if we could all please stand, we're going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I know, I guess got you seated and now we're standing again. It's all good. Oh. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you all. We have a very full program for you this morning, so please sure to proceed with your breakfast as it is served. As all of you know, events like this would not be possible without the generous support of sponsors. So I want to begin by extending our thanks to all the organizations that have sponsored tables here today. A listing of the full sponsors is in your program and was running on the screens throughout the morning. But I just want to highlight a few. Our platinum sponsors: Montgomery County Education Association, yes, the universities at Shady Grove, Total Wine and More, University of Maryland Global Campus, and our gold sponsors, Baltimore Washington Labor's District Council, Chesapeake Public Strategies, Greater Capital Area Association of Realtors, Interfaith Works, Lurch, Early and Brewer, Montgomery College, there you go, and Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce. Speaking of sponsors, I want to invite Blakley Piometto to join me on stage. Blakley is the Senior Vice President of Chief Academic Officer at the University of Maryland Global Campus. And we are so happy to welcome them as one of our platinum sponsors this year. We're going to introduce many elected officials gathered here a bit later in our program, but we have a few special guests we'd like to join at this time, and Blakley's going to introduce them.
Thank you, Shannon. On behalf of everyone at University of Maryland Global Campus, we are delighted to be a part of this year's Committee for Montgomery Legislative Breakfast. And like all of you, eager to hear from our new governor-elect in just a few moments. But before I do that, I have the honor of asking that you join us this morning in recognizing another groundbreaking statewide leader who is joining us today, our new comptroller, Brooke Learman.
Thank you, Blakley. As we get started with our program, it's a pleasure to introduce someone who has probably been here almost all these breakfasts over the last 3 decades. First as a state delegate, then as a state senator, before becoming a congressman, and now our esteemed U.S. Senator. Please welcome to the stage Senator Chris Van Hollen. Oh, you could have come around. It's all good.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. It is great to see the team from Committee for Montgomery gathered here in person. I want to thank the leadership of that team. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you to Marjorie Goldman, the chair. Thank you, Debbie Liverpool. And I want to thank all of you who are here today, because all of you represent part of Team Montgomery, coming together from the nonprofit sector, the private sector, and the government sector, putting together a plan to help move Montgomery County and the state of Maryland forward. So let's give you all a big round of applause. Really putting together that common agenda. I also wanted to be here this morning to thank all of you and the people of Maryland for the opportunity to represent you for another term in the United States Senate. Thank you all for that honor. And I wanted to be here with you as we give a warm Montgomery County welcome, I guess because of COVID and other challenges over video, but let's give a warm welcome to the newly sworn in a few weeks, Governor and Lieutenant Governor of the state of Maryland, Wes Moore and Aruna Miller. And Brooke Learman, congratulations. We look forward to working with you as comptroller. And Anthony Brown, congratulations on the Attorney General. It was great to be part of what was a historic ticket. And I understand that County Executive Angela Alserbrooks from Prince George's County may be in the House. If not now, may be joining us. And I want to thank her for her partnership with Montgomery County and the whole state of Maryland. Let's give her a round of applause. I don't know if she's here. Now, I'm just going to take a few minutes to also say thank you on behalf of myself, Senator Cardin, Jamie Raskin, David Trone, and the entire Maryland congressional delegation for working together in partnership over the last 2 years. It has been a tumultuous time for our country, both politically and also, of course, addressing the pandemic. But we came together to meet the challenge. And in the United States Congress, as rocky as the politics in our country has been, the last 2 years have been among the most productive legislative 2 years in recent history. We started out passing the American Rescue Plan. That was just about 2 years ago. And that allowed us to deploy more vaccines more rapidly and more equitably and allow people to gather together in places like this today. And it also provided a lifeline to so many parts of our economy and so many small businesses, transit systems, state and local governments. In fact, Montgomery County still has some of the funds from the American Rescue Plan that it's using to continue to fight the pandemic and deal with the aftershocks. But we didn't stop there. We then went on and passed the Infrastructure Modernization Bill. And I want to mention a few highlights of this. Some of them you know, some of them you may not know. It does include $7 billion over the next 5 years in funds that will come to the state of Maryland for all sorts of infrastructure programs, from transit to bridges to highways and much more. The other piece of it is about $150 billion in a national pool of money for competitive grants. And it's very important that we organize ourselves, both in terms of Maryland counties, Montgomery County, and the state of Maryland, to compete for those $150 billion of grants that are going to be, as I said, competitive. And we can do it. In fact, Montgomery County's already received over $14 million in competitive grants. So has Prince George's County received some funds, but most of the money is still out there. We need to come up with innovative, creative proposals to put that money to work, and I know that we will. We also passed the CHIPS and Science Bill. The CHIPS part, of course, dealt with making sure we have an American manufacturing base for the most advanced chips and electronics, but often overlooked has been the science part of that legislation. The National Science Foundation will receive more funds, and places like NIST here in Montgomery County and others stand to see great new investments to help move our country forward so we can compete in the 21st century. And for those of you who are following the issue of the cancer moonshot and President Biden's plan to create what's called an ARPA-H, H is for health, we are working right now, and I think we will be successful at preventing an amendment to the bill that wants to say that the Washington metropolitan region cannot compete for ARPA-H. We need to be able to compete for ARPA-H, and I think we're going to make sure that we can do that. And finally, we passed the Inflation Reduction Act dealing with prescription drug costs, and very importantly, to more rapidly deploy clean energy. I've been working for over a decade on something called the National Green Bank, the Climate Bank, and we are in the process now of working to pool the funds together, and Montgomery County already has its own green bank. State of Maryland has some financing entities for green energy, but this is another area where there's going to be a huge amount of investment, and they're just putting together the rules to make sure that we can have good playing fields to compete for those funds, and I know we can do that together. So I'm going to end with this. We're ending strong. I was just very proud to be at the White House for the bill signing of the Respect for Marriage Act. Something so many of us have been working on since my days in the state legislature and continuing on. And I do want to thank all our local leaders, from our county executive to our county council to our General Assembly leaders, for the work they do, both on the investment side, bringing funds back, but also making sure that we as a state move forward to build a more perfect union. We also have two more items of business to finish up in the Congress before we go out. One we did last night at about 9:30, which is passing the National Defense Authorization Bill, which is a very big piece of legislation to support places like Walter Reed here in Montgomery County and other military installations around the state, and of course our servicemen and women who are there for us every day. Our remaining item of business, of course, is to keep the federal government open, and not just open, but to try to make sure we have a budget for next year that meets our challenges. We are still working on that. The clock is ticking. We're hoping to wrap that up by late next week, certainly before Christmas. Let me just close where I started by thanking all of you, because this is a partnership, and it's only by coordinating our efforts with everybody in this room that we can move Montgomery County, Maryland, and the United States of America forward. Thank you all. God bless you.
Thank you, Senator Van Hollen. At this time, I want to welcome to the stage the Chair of Committee for Montgomery, Marjorie Goldman.
Wow, this is a lot of people. Thank you, Shannon. The Committee for Montgomery advocates for Montgomery County's needs in Annapolis. We work to ensure that our county's priorities are heard and for a fair share of the resources and funding so that Montgomery County can continue to be a great place to work, live, and play. We're going to hear more about our legislative priorities in a little bit, later in the program. First, some housekeeping. It takes a village to pull off an event like this of this size and scope. We have about 700 to 800 people here today. I'd like to thank our terrific chairs, Shannon, Babe Thomas, Elaine Baxter-Chang, and Steve Simon for all their hard work, and especially Bonnie Casper for chipping in all ways. I'd also like to particularly recognize the Committee for Montgomery's Board of Directors for their dedication, and for our Executive Director, Deborah Liverpool, for keeping us on track. Would the members of the Board of Directors please stand? Thank you. Okay, well, just about a year ago, the Committee for Montgomery Breakfast featured a forum for the many candidates who wanted to be the state's next governor. We had 9 candidates participate, Democrat, Republican, and Libertarian, and it was a very spirited conversation. And It was coincidentally one of the first in-person events after the COVID restrictions were lifted. Just the day before the breakfast, Wes Moore announced his choice for Lieutenant Governor, Montgomery County's own Aruna Miller. Many of us know, Many of us know Aruna as a friend and a colleague, and there was a lot of buzz in the room that day, since our event was the first time that Aruna and Wes had appeared in person. At that moment, Wes Moore was polling at literally 1%, right behind I'm not voting. But Wes Moore has come a long way since December 2021. The former combat veteran, nonprofit CEO, and author took his message of leave no one behind across the state, and that message took hold and resonated. On January 18th, Wes Moore will be sworn in as Maryland's next governor. It's my pleasure to introduce Governor-elect Wes Moore, who will be joining us today by Zoom.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Marjorie. Thank you. And good morning. Good morning, everybody. It is my honor to be with you this morning and an honor to be with all of you at Committee for Montgomery. And Marjorie, thank you for your leadership, not just in the organization, but for your leadership on everything from housing issues to issues of focusing on equity. I am so incredibly grateful to you. And I apologize that I have to do this virtually. Unfortunately, I woke up yesterday feeling a little bit sick, and although I'm feeling a little better now, I know, and I did test negative for COVID now 2 days in a row. The First Lady is making me slow down, and as she shared with me, the only thing that I should be spreading at this point are holiday greetings. So I apologize that I have to do this virtually, but it is wonderful to be with you, and it's wise actually, because I know that next year we are going to be entering into this next year in an absolute full sprint. 2023 will be the first year that we have the opportunity to truly work together to make this Maryland's decade, and we are committed to doing exactly that in partnership with each and every one of you. And I think you've seen that we've already started at a pretty fast clip. For our transition, the Moore Miller transition is being chaired by my dear friend, our remarkable leader and your next Lieutenant Governor, Montgomery County's own Aruna Miller. And she is absolutely, yes, I mean, she is remarkable. And I'm so excited about the work that's already being done, where when we said we are going to build the most inclusive, the most aggressive, the most comprehensive transition process in our state's history, we meant that. And you're seeing exactly what that looks like, where we've named over 200 members to our transition team, many of whom are actually in the room right now. And I say thank you for your leadership and all of your work, and have over 1,400 at-large members who have signed up. All this week, our policy committees have held public town hall meetings, getting community input, and truly charting for the course of our future. I also could not be more excited about the team that we're building. When we said that we are going to build an administration that looks like the state of Maryland, and build the most hard-charging, accountable, and competent administration that the state has ever seen, we meant that too. And we are off to a fantastic start. And I particularly wanted to acknowledge someone who is in the room with you all right now, our outstanding Chief Legislative Officer, Montgomery County's own Elrich, who I could not be more thankful to work with every single day. I remember one of the hardest conversations I had was when I had to call the speaker and let her know that I was going to ask Elrich to take on this role. And I absolutely adore our speaker, and I know our speaker absolutely adores Elrich. And I think she's now talking to me again. But it took some time, because she knows what an outstanding leader he was in the legislature, but also what it's going to mean to have him leading our legislative charge from Annapolis as well. And I'm also really grateful for the chance to be able to be in a room like this virtually, because I know what this room represents. This room represents progress, because this room represents the beautiful diversity of our state and the beautiful diversity of our economy. You know, I have had a chance to, I've led soldiers in combat. I've run and led a successful small business here in Maryland. I've led one of the largest poverty fighting organizations in this country. through the nonprofit sector. And the thing that I know as we're heading into Annapolis is the only way progress is going to happen is if we do it together. Is if every single sector, every single entity understands their place in the conversation and understands they have a place in the conversation. That we are going to build this collectively. That's how we're going to focus on making sure that we actually build sustainability and actual sustainable economic mobility. That's the only way we're going to address core pathways to work, wages, and wealth for all of our families and not just some. And frankly, it's the only way that I've ever led. It's the only way I've ever done it. And so it's the only way that our administration is going to lead inside at this moment. And so we know that together we will present Montgomery County, this region, we will present those type of opportunities where we'll see that so much of the growth that we're going to see in the state of Maryland will be because this is going to be a powerful decade for Montgomery County. And we have, I know just, yesterday we were talking about some of our core priorities. And while we appreciated the suggestions of the current administration, we know that there are certain things that we're going to be bold on because this is exactly what the people of the state asked us to do. And that includes making sure that we are going to prioritize and focus on transportation assets. And that also means doing things like ensuring that we can deal with the congestion of the Beltway and 270 and the American Legion Bridge, which will be in the hands of the next Board of Public Works. We will take a core focus around addressing this congestion. We will not be another administration that just kicks this can down the road. And we will also address it through the lens that we think is important when it comes to addressing all transportation projects, which means addressing it through a lens of equity, i.e. who's building it and who can benefit from it, addressing it through the lens of environmental protection, sustainable environmental and environmental justice issues that have been neglected in the process, and also address it with a core understanding of what it means to move in partnership with local jurisdictions, local elected officials, and local leaders. We will get this work done. It will happen during our time. And at the same time, we will ensure that the process that we're building out keep all of those things as the lens in which we are going to focus on growth and focus on a build out. That we know that together, we are going to focus on making our state more competitive. Maryland arguably possesses greater latent potential for broad economic prosperity than any state in this country. I will put the assets of the state of Maryland against anywhere else. But the reality is right now, Maryland is asset rich and strategy poor. We've got to do a better job of leveraging our assets that are not just attributable to our local jurisdictions, but are tethered. And that means we have to leverage assets such as the fact that we have a strongly and a highly educated workforce. We have excellent universities to include Shady Grove, UMGC, Montgomery College, 4 of the top HBCUs in this country. Incredible industries like biotech and cyber and life sciences. A world-class research base, proximity to the nation's capital. Extraordinary natural beauty and resources. This is going to be Maryland's decade. And we are going to be more competitive. But we know that we can be both more competitive and also more equitable, and that is not a choice. We can and we will do both. We will create and support elements to make Maryland the home of entrepreneurship, the home of innovation, the places where people want to come and grow and stay and build and retire. We know we have all the assets to do it, but it means we are going to be deliberate about how we're investing that it's going to have the largest societal return on that investment. And it means we are going to ensure that we have a 21st century education system for all of our children and not just some. It is the reason why, as governor, I have pledged, and I stand by, and we will not retreat from the idea that I am not just a supporter of the blueprint for a blueprint, and also someone who proudly worked on it, testified on behalf of it, that we are going to ensure that the blueprint is going to be fully funded, and together in partnership, we will make sure that it is properly implemented. We know that that includes elements like we've got to start earlier for early childhood education, making early childhood education more affordable, accessible for every child in need. And that includes for every child in need having access to pre-K and growing out our early childhood infrastructure. It also means we're going to invest in job reskilling and job retraining, and also ensuring that the only guidelines for a successful high school education should not just be, were you accepted to a four-year college? Because that's not going to be the path for every student. That we are going to invest in our workforce in a unique way, to knowing the fact that there is no reason that the state of Maryland right now is 47th in this country in unemployment. Not with our base, not with our workforce, not with our talented potential. The challenge is why we have 2 available jobs for every single person filing for unemployment, is there's a disconnect. And it is going to be our priority in this decade to address that disconnect. And it means we're going to address the issue of climate change with a very real and a very sincere prioritization. And I'm so thankful for the fact that we have a remarkable federal delegation. And Senator Van Hollen, it is great to see you this morning, and thank you for your leadership on this. Because when you look at what the federal delegation has gotten done, even just simply look at IRA, this is a unique opportunity for Maryland to lead when it comes to solar and wind technology, being able to electrify the grid so we can actually focus on things like electric cars. But it's our job to become a national leader in protecting our environment and preventing and actually moving towards making sure that we are addressing the issue of environmental injustice. This crisis demands it, and our children deserve it. This will be our time, and this will be Maryland's decade. But it's going to be Maryland's decade because we're going to do it together. It's going to be Maryland's decade because we're asking every single sector to be involved. We plan on incentivizing every sector to be engaged. And we plan on building a state where we're not leaving anyone behind. So I'm thankful for your partnership. I'm thankful for your commitment. I'm thankful for your leadership. I'm thankful for your work. I'm thankful for your belief in Montgomery County and for your belief in the state of Maryland. Because in this time, we are truly going to build a state that those who came before us that they hope for, and those who will come after us that they deserve. So bless you all. Happy holidays. Thank you for all you do. And I look forward to seeing you in person very, very soon.
Okay. Now, it is my pleasure to invite to the stage for some remarks the new president of Montgomery County Council, who just began his second term as a council member. Please welcome to the stage, Evan Glass.
Good morning, everybody. Good to see everybody in this room. Shannon, thank you so much for the introduction and for chairing this morning's breakfast. I'll tell you, 5 years ago, I had the pleasure of chairing this breakfast, and one of the hardest things to do in all of Montgomery County politics is asking each and every one of you to be quiet before this breakfast began, and Shannon, you did it with great distinction, so thank you for that. To Marjorie, Steve, Deborah, everybody else who helped organize this morning's breakfast, thank you very much. As I noted, I know how hard it is and how much time goes into this event. And can we get another round of applause for Governor-elect Wes Moore? Not only feeling under the weather, but recognizing how important it is to be with us today, to be a true partner with Montgomery County, which will be a welcome change from the last 8 years, in my humble opinion. And I'm looking forward to working with him and Lieutenant Governor-elect Aruna Miller and Comptroller-elect Brooke Learman and everybody in Annapolis to continue doing good things for Maryland and for Montgomery County. Important stuff, good partnerships. And you know, the Committee for Montgomery, every single one of you does great work in our community. The collaborations, the partnerships to make sure that each and every one of the 1.1 million people who live here are healthy, are housed, have a social safety net under them, are educated, have jobs, can safely get around our community. That is the important work that we all do here, and the reason that you all are here right now. In a quick scan of the room, we have incredible leaders and activists and business owners and entrepreneurs, and I just want to thank you for your engagement and for being here. And I also, looking around the room, I see a number of my colleagues on the 20th Council of Montgomery County, which is the most diverse council we have ever had here. representing the true diversity of our community, home to 4 of the 10 most diverse places in the United States, and our council is a majority female. If all of my colleagues could please stand and get the appreciation that you rightfully deserve. I am very excited to get to work with them collaboratively over the next year, over the next term, over the next 4 years, and we've got a lot of work to do. But I think it's also important to take a look at what we've done, particularly over the last year or two during the pandemic. We had a global pandemic here, but we also had the highest vaccination rate in the entire country. And again, that is part of the collaboration with everybody in this room, making sure that our students, our teachers, our workforce, our employees, our bus operators, everybody had access, and when they couldn't get access, we went out and made sure they had access in their neighborhoods, in their churches, and their houses of worship. We also passed the largest budget Montgomery County has ever seen, where we made sure that families are protected in the social safety net, schools get the funding that they need, and we continue putting money into economic development and transportation priorities so that we can continue moving our community forward. And we did all that, as I noted, during the pandemic. But looking ahead, we have some more work that we have to do, and the work that we are going to do is going to be focused on social equity, on inclusion, on diversity, on economic development, because as Governor-elect Wes Moore said, we can grow our economy, but be inclusive in the way that we do it. And I know that's what I and my colleagues are devoted to doing as well. But looking forward into the next year, we're going to continue making sure that every single person in Montgomery County has access to safe and good quality housing, recognizing that whether or not you are just recently a college grad trying to afford a place on your own, if you are a young family with a child or two on the way, that you can afford to live in Montgomery County, and if you are an empty nester and want to get out of your single-family home and maybe downsize, we need to make sure that every single person has an opportunity to remain in Montgomery County and safely age in place. And when we say that Montgomery County is open for business, we really have to mean it. And I'm committed to making sure that we do continue making sure that we are economically competitive, not only for emerging entrepreneurs, but our women and minority-owned businesses, disabled-owned businesses, and those who want to continue moving to Montgomery County because we are the 4th largest biotech hub in the nation. And we need to continue building off of that. I'm also particularly excited that one of the first things I did as council president was create a new committee, the Economic Development Committee, so that we have more time in Rockville to talk about these issues. Because whether or not you want to help bring more Fortune 500 companies to Montgomery County, if you want to help make it a better place for emerging entrepreneurs, or if you also want to talk about closing the racial wealth gap, wage inequality, or providing more support for small minority businesses, this is the committee to go to. This is where we're going to have the conversations. This is where we're going to look at regulations and policies to make sure that we continue growing, not only here in the state of Maryland, but also that our stature in the region will continue to grow. So I'm really excited about the Economic Development Committee. And also, there's more work to be done with regard to our federal partnerships, and I appreciate Senator Chris Van Hollen being here, and the entire federal delegation who provided Montgomery County nearly $200 million during the pandemic. And that is what kept our residents healthy, safe, and housed. And as he noted, we have some of those funds remaining, and so we're going to continue using that in the correct way, and making sure that we are mindful of our budget and our taxpayers as well. And so, in closing, I just want to say thank you. I am really excited to be starting this council, to be starting this legislative session, not only with each of you, but with my 10 other colleagues on the council, because we got more work to do. And the only way that we here in Montgomery County are going to continue moving forward is making sure that every single person in this room and all of our networks out of this room do this work collaboratively. That is the only way we're going to succeed. It is true to who we are as the most diverse place in Maryland, which is the most diverse place on the East Coast. Looking around this room, I know we're all committed to it. I'm committed to it, so let's get to work. Thank you all very much.
At this time, I want to invite our panel to come take the stage and take their seats. And while we're doing that, I'd like to introduce the elected officials who have joined us today. I'm not confident that I wouldn't miss anyone, so the way that I'm going to do it is I'm just going to list categories, and if you could rise, and we'll give applaud as we go through those, that'd be fabulous. So I'm going to start with Montgomery County Council members and all county elected officials. All members of the Maryland General Assembly. All municipal, city, and town leaders. Members of our congressional delegation and their representatives. Thank you all so much for being here with us today, and thank you so much for supporting Montgomery County. Okay, well, here we go. Next, I have the privilege of talking about our outstanding panel we have here today. And I'm going to start first with our panelists. We have Montgomery County Executive Marc Elrich, State Senator Ben Kramer and Chair of the County Senate Delegation in Annapolis, State Delegate Palakovich Carr, the new Chair of the Montgomery County Council Delegation, Montgomery County Council Vice President Andrew Friedson, and Luedtke, the Chief Legislative Officer for Westmore. Finally, it's my pleasure to turn the program over now to our moderator and Chair of the Committee of Montgomery's Issues Committee, Samir Paul. So Samir, take it away.
Thank you very much, Shannon. Thank you all for being here today. Volume's okay? All right, excellent. First of all, let's start with, at the state level, Eric. Congratulations on the new job. Thank you for standing in for Aruna this morning. You're just about to start as Governor-elect Moore's Chief Legislative Officer. Fantastic news. I think it would, yeah, we can clap for that. That's pretty good. Montgomery County son going to the... So I think it would not be controversial of me to say that relations between the governor's office and the General Assembly, and Montgomery County even in particular, over the past 8 years were at times strained. So could you tell us a little bit about what that relationship is going to look like under Governor-elect Moore, how that's going to change, and what that's going to look like for Montgomery County?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me and letting me stand in for our fantastic Lieutenant Governor-elect Aruna Miller, Montgomery County's own. Unfortunately, we you know, it's that time of year. It's the season of sickness. We're looking for a complete reset in those relationships. Governor-elect Moore, as you heard in his speech earlier, is a deep believer in working with people across sectors in inclusive leadership so that everybody has a seat at the table to have their opinions heard. And even now, even before we've taken office, because we're not official till January 18th, I keep telling people this is the busiest I've ever been while unemployed. The Governor-elect has been meeting with legislative leaders, our team has been meeting with legislative leaders, and we've been meeting with county officials and talking with county officials. So for example, one of the biggest issues on the table here in Montgomery County we know is transportation and conversations about the 274-95 project, and we've already been including the county executive and folks from the administration at the county level in those conversations to make sure everybody has a voice. So we're looking for 100% complete reset and collaborative relationships from here on.
That's really great to hear. Let's jump to Senator Kramer. Ben, we know that Montgomery County has the largest delegation in the General Assembly. And in fact, Josh Kurtz wrote pretty compellingly last summer about the challenges of having a large delegation that we're always looking for more influence and clout in Annapolis. So especially considering that we may still see some shakeups as the new governor does more and more hiring for senior level positions. Where do you think we stand right now in terms of our influence and clout in the Assembly, in terms of committee structure, seniority, all of that? And what do you see as our trajectory and our path forward?
Thank you for that excellent question. And I have to say that in my 17 years in the legislature, I don't think Montgomery County has been better positioned than they are right now. And I just want to share with all of you that I am so looking forward to working with this new administration. I feel nothing but very strong, positive vibes coming from the administration and the relationship that we will have. But I can also tell you that the folks who are going to be doing the actual work in the trenches, the day-to-day efforts to make change in the legislature, are the folks who are sitting in this room. So real fast, if I can ask every member of the state legislature to please stand up right now so that folks can see the worker bees, the ones who are doing the heavy lifting. Stand up real fast, please. The House is very well positioned, and I will let Delegate Palakovich Carr discuss the House side. On the Senate side, we are filled with rock stars in the legislature, starting with Craig Zucker, Senator Zucker, who chairs capital budget in the state Senate. Senator Zucker took over that position last legislative session, and working with also on budget and tax, Senator Nancy King and the rest of us in the delegation, Montgomery County brought record funding back home to our county executive, to our county council, to the people of Montgomery County. So we immediately put the good work of Senator Zucker's position to the benefit of Montgomery County residents. We also have Senator Brian Feldman, who is currently the vice chair of the very powerful Finance Committee. And the way things are shaping up, there may be a chairmanship in the future for Senator Feldman. That has yet to be seen. We also have Senator Susan Lee, who is the majority whip and very much involved in everything that shapes our Senate and our legislature. We also have Senator Cheryl Kagan, vice chair of the very important Education, Health, and Environmental Matters Committee. Very important legislation goes before that committee, and she serves as the vice chair. We also have a powerful duo on the Judicial Proceedings Committee. We have Senator Jeff Waldstreicher, and I'll jump right to who serves as the vice chair of that committee, and Senator Will Smith, who serves as the chair. This is a committee that takes on incredibly difficult subject matter and the two of them are both brilliant in the way they handle it, and couldn't be more proud of the work they are doing. And then we also have, from Montgomery County, the majority leader in the Senate, Senator Nancy King. And for those of you who know Senator King, you know she is as sharp as it gets on budget matters, and her role as majority leader is to be in the room and make sure the voices of the Montgomery County residents are being heard. So I can share with you that we are exceedingly well positioned with regard to Montgomery County in the state Senate.
That's great to hear. Delegate Palakovich Carr, can you just fill in the gaps on the House side for us? How are things looking, and what's the trajectory going to look like?
I think we're poised to have a very exciting and productive legislative session this year. Our House delegation has grown. We're up to 26 members with the addition of the new Up County district that includes part of Clarksburg and Damascus and extends into Howard County. And we are a very talented group of legislators who are really poised to get things done this session. So we're very much looking forward to working with the new administration, continuing to work with our colleague, Delegate Luedtke, in his new capacity as Chief Legislative Officer, really to deliver for the people of Montgomery this year.
That's great. Let's shift gears to the county level now. We're going to talk economic development and transportation with both the county executive and Council Vice President Friedson. So let's start with Andrew. Let's talk about economic development at first. There was a story in Montgomery Perspective not too long ago that highlighted some Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers that showed an overall 7% job loss in the past 10, 15 years in Montgomery County. You compare that to sort of 3% growth regionally and bigger numbers in DC and in the far-flung counties in Virginia. So what are some consensus ideas that the county executive, the delegation share for making Montgomery County more competitive within the region? And how can the state support that? What's the state's role? What kind of help do we need from the state to put all that in play?
Well, thank you so much for the question. Really appreciate being here. We have to be honest about the challenges that we face. And we face some challenges economically. We need to be more competitive. We can't rest on the laurels that Montgomery County has always been a great place to work and to live. It is, it continues to be, but everybody else has stepped up their game, and we have to step up ours. But I am more confident and more excited and more bullish about the opportunities that we have in Montgomery County economically. And we have to remember that every other jurisdiction on earth, basically, would love to face the challenges that we face with the opportunities that we have. And we can't talk about economic development without housing and without transportation, and we need state support for that. But let me focus on particularly economic development related to biohealth. We have done a tremendous job in Montgomery County of really focusing on this. We have, based on, depending on how you look at it, the third or fourth best biohealth cluster in the country, but we won't have the best biohealth cluster in the country. The new economic development strategic plan that I sponsored, that the council and the county executive worked on, now has a consensus around where we're going to go and how we're going to get there and how we're going to hold ourselves accountable to it. And it really focuses on biohealth and growth industries and also on quantum computing. And so the county executive, I really appreciate the work that he has done on the Center for Health Computing that the county council unanimously supported. We have a huge commitment of county dollars, $15 million up front and $5 million a year every year for the next 5 years. That's matched by $5 million every year for those next 5 years from the University of Maryland at College Park and the University of Maryland, Baltimore, with a partnership with the University of Maryland Medical System. For that project to achieve its potential, for it to do what we have said it's going to do and what we hope it's going to do, we need massive state support to take it to the next level. We're going to need tens of millions of dollars to build building and campus and to really grow that out. And I know we're going to work closely with our Chief Legislative Officer here, with Capital Budget Chair Craig Zucker, with District 16-18 delegation, with the entire Montgomery County delegation to make sure we secure that. But COVID has showed us that Montgomery County's strength in biohealth could be a huge opportunity for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And this didn't happen by accident, it didn't happen by chance. The federal labs that are here are a huge benefit, but really it was the Human Genome Project, a $3.8 billion federal investment that created at least $800 billion when it was last analyzed in 2015 in private economic activity. $800 billion, it's probably well over $1 trillion now. That type of federal support and state support to build out this type of industry is critical, and we need to make it happen. And then we need to make sure that we're connecting with the universities at Shady Grove and with Montgomery College and with our private partners. But there's real opportunity here. I think the state could be a huge partner, and if we are really going to reach the full potential of our biohealth industry and to see this significant investment really take off, the collaboration that we're already having between College Park, University of Maryland, Baltimore, University of Maryland Medical System, and the county for the first time, creating that research triangle that has never existed before and that will exist now for the first time. With state support, significant state support, we could be the center of the health data universe in Maryland, and specifically core right here in Montgomery County, and literally across the street from here. And I'm really excited about that. I think our challenges in economic development are real, but if you compare our problems to our possibilities and our potential, it's not even close. And I think the people in this room know that, and I think the people in this room are part of that, and we need the state to understand the central role that Montgomery County has. So goes Montgomery County, so goes the state of Maryland when it comes to economic growth and development. And we know that we have a chief legislative officer that knows that. I know that we have a lieutenant governor who knows that, and I know we have a governor as well in a General Assembly with a growing delegation. We can really bring that home and make that happen.
Thank you very much. That's a great answer. For the county executive, Marc, really want to commend you again on everything with the new opportunities that Andrew had mentioned. So if you have anything you'd like to add about that, we'd love to hear it. But I'd also like to ask you a transportation question. Last session, you made transportation funding a big priority, and as a result, we got $60 million for bus rapid transit. So in addition to anything you want to add about the new economic development opportunities, could you also tell us a bit more about plans for a robust bus rapid transit network in the county? Give us sort of a status update and tell us about the state investment we're going to need.
So where to begin? The project that we're doing in North Bethesda White Oak is going to be a game-changing project for Montgomery County. We started on it before the pandemic, and the first launch I tried to do up in White Flint, back when it was called White Flint, was to find a developer to develop a very large piece of property in Montgomery County that wasn't just been sitting there kind of fallow. I refer to it as Lord and Taylor in a pile of dirt. And so I asked if I could bring in an outside developer who might want to partner with or replace the current developer, and I was said, bring him in. I brought him in. They didn't wind up making a deal, but what it told me was that somebody with a whole lot of money was interested in coming here and doing something significant. In the meantime, I had been talking a lot with folks in the bio cluster, visiting a lot of companies, and I realized more and more people were doing their medical research on computers. There has been this enormous transformation of research from wet labs into electronics, and it is really a game changer. And we're on the cutting edge of it. It's just taking place, but it's not fully developed yet. And so I started asking, I did two things. I went to Amada and I said, can you guys bring in a master developer to develop the White Flint Center as a life sciences center? And it's taken 3 years, but this is where they're going to go. So you're going to look at a master developer who focuses on bringing in life sciences companies at the Metro. And I went to the University of Maryland, and this was also a literally 3-year process of talking to them about bringing graduate level research to Montgomery County. When you ask people in the industry, you know, what is the impediment here? It's talent, and it's not being the only major life sciences center in the entire country not anchored by life science research at the graduate level. And so I kept making this point to Maryland, and I'll say that, you know, I pointed out when we didn't get Amazon, not because we didn't outbid Virginia. We outbid Virginia. We didn't get it because Virginia recognized that Amazon wanted talent. And UVA and George Mason, they were all lined up to support the talent needs of Amazon, and that got missed here in the state. I wanted to make sure that our biotech industry, which kept saying we need talent, that we sent that message to the university, and we pointed out to the university that in the state, Virginia uses the university as an economic development tool to drive economic development. They dangle that out there because it is a valuable asset, and we hadn't done that here. So we're doing that now, and this center is going to be a big deal. WMATA wants it as the, what do you call it, the marquee project on their station site. They've got 14 acres they can develop. We're very excited about that, and everybody else is now pivoting projects to life sciences. So I think what we set out to do is going to happen, and you know, it's and we did this during the middle of COVID, which I don't think is any small thing. So I think this county is well poised to move forward, but it also sends a message broader to the business community outside of life sciences that you can actually do business in Montgomery County, that we're willing to be progressive, modify rules, and make sure we can move forward. When I first came in, I don't know if Sydney Katz is still here, but Sydney and I did a listening tour of small businesses, and we asked them literally, tell us why you tell your friends not to come here. You know, what is the problem with Montgomery County? And then we started making changes in permitting and procurement to address the problems of Montgomery County, and we're not done yet. We want this to be the most straightforward, simplest place to deal with. I totally believe in regulation. I believe you protect the environment and all that stuff, but you don't have to make it complicated, painful, and overly expensive. And so we've done a lot of work to try to reform the things we do so the companies want to be here. All the zoning that got done when I was on the council, I will point out, led to no economic development and no housing. And what it told me and told other people was, it's not enough to zone, you have to have a reason to be here. And that's what our focus on life science was to give companies a reason to be here, to look at this as a special place where you want to bring your companies, you want to grow your companies, you want to start your companies. And I think that's the kind of change we've been able to make, and I think it's going to be really important going forward. Transportation is big generally, but it's also big here. Washington Post, rarely quote them, but they did a story about 5 years ago pointing out, they interviewed business leaders around the region. Business leaders said the biggest impediment to economic development was transportation, and specifically the bus systems. And so we had this system of BRT, which I drew out 14 years ago. You guys seen a BRT bus? 14 years ago, we drew this thing out and said, this is what we need to do to be competitive. We're now in the process. Thank you, legislature, for sending us money to start this process. But yes, it's a beginning. But I want to put it in context. When Governor Hogan dangled Amazon, or dangled White Flint to Amazon, Hogan was going to make a massive investment in 3 BRT lines, because you can't develop 11 or 15 million square feet unless you've got the transportation to get people to those 11 to 15 million square feet. Now we've got the impetus to develop that amount of space, and we can develop that amount of space. We need the state to step up and provide us a transportation system that'll let us get the workers there. Amazon asked for it. Amazon knew they wouldn't be able to get their employees there without a transportation network. We need to put that in place now, and that's not a $60 million item. It is probably closer to $1 billion item when you include all the different lines that have to feed into. But this is an investment that Virginia makes all the time. And this is one of the things that made us not competitive with Virginia. They built the Silver Line. Every Northern Virginia county has a BRT line. Montgomery County has none of those things in all this time. And so if you want to be competitive, you got to start looking at what other people have done to be competitive. So we're going to make a big push on BRT. We're looking at funding mechanisms. The county has to contribute. I sat on councils where for years the mantra was, don't put any county money into this because then the state will never give us anything. And what we succeeded in was getting no money from the state and no money from the county, building no transit, and falling behind. This is our opportunity to do this right, and it's my intention to see that we do this right and make ourselves competitive in the most important ways. We're also working with the governor on the I-270-495 project, and I want to assure everybody that the governor was serious about saying he wanted to fix the problem. We're just convinced we can fix it in a less expensive, more responsible way. That project was designed, thank you, that project was designed to satisfy a particular builder. It was not designed to satisfy our traffic problems. And as I will point out to people, you could fix I-270 tomorrow. Good luck getting off I-270 and going to work. Good luck getting off the spur or getting off the Beltway at Georgia Avenue and then immediately plowing into a line of traffic that goes all the way to the jobs in Silver Spring or getting off of Wisconsin trying to get to Bethesda. So a transportation system has to be more comprehensive and take into account if you're going to speed people down the Beltway to an exit, they better be able to get off the exit. You can't have them backing up to the Surrender Dorothy Bridge after, you all know where that bridge is. After you have 2 lanes on the exit ramp, and they still can't get on Georgia Avenue any faster than they got on before. So we need a comprehensive solution. I think we've got a governor who understands that. I am so excited about a partnership with this administration after dealing with Hogan the last 4 years. And it really was principled issues. Montgomery County is a welcoming, inclusive place. He did not like our positions on immigration. And we took, I think, the right actions on health to keep people safe during COVID, and he didn't want to do that. And I remind people all the time, if you want to, we became a laboratory. And it's like you're not supposed to experiment on humans, but we wound up in this great human experiment. Look at the death rates and case rates in Montgomery County that followed one path. Look at those same rates in the counties that didn't. We win, which means you win. And thank you all for following the advice. So I'll stop there. I think I covered things.
Thank you very much. While we're on transportation, Delegate Palakovich, Carr, other than the $1 billion you're going to bring home for us for a full network, two-part question here. Tell us about what else is on deck in terms of rail, roads, pedestrian safety, bike infrastructure, et cetera. And then second thing, maybe more sensitive, in a world where Governor-elect Moore has expressed just an ironclad commitment to making the Baltimore Red Line happen, great news, what does it look like to advocate for Montgomery County's continuing transportation need? How are we going to balance that?
Thank you for those questions and the emphasis on transportation. And I just want to take a step back and say, as I look through the program here today and the legislative priorities that Committee for Montgomery is presenting, to me it seemed like transportation was the common thread, from economic development to providing and creating good paying jobs to tackling climate change and affordable housing and social equity issues. Transportation really is the solution to so many facets of those problems. We've had a lot of success in our delegation as a General Assembly in recent years, especially in terms of public transportation. As was mentioned, this past year brought back a record amount of one-time funding for bus rapid transit, as well as ongoing funds for the system here in Montgomery County. But we've also been successful in securing stabilizing funds for Metro, for pushing for an expanded vision of Marc commuter rail service in our state, for providing stabilizing funds for the small businesses that are being impacted by the ongoing construction of the Purple Line, and also in addressing roadway safety, because we know that there are a lot of vulnerable roadway users here in Montgomery County who are walking and biking, either by choice or by necessity, who either feel unsafe or actually are unsafe and unfortunately are getting killed, especially on our state roadways. So as individual members of our delegation, collectively as a delegation, we've been really pushing ahead on all of these issues, and I would anticipate that these are going to be subjects that come back this session, especially in terms of the bus rapid transit funding. We want to make sure and have had ongoing conversations with the county to make sure that we can fully leverage the federal infrastructure dollars that are available, and that Montgomery County really is poised to make the most of that money in terms of transportation infrastructure to be built in our county. In regards to the regional tribalism around transportation or other issues, I guess from my own personal philosophy is that we're a small state, and I live here in Rockville. The amount of time it takes me to get to downtown Washington, D.C. isn't that much shorter than the amount of time it takes me to get to downtown Baltimore. So investments like the Red Line in Baltimore City aren't just good for Baltimore, they're good for all of us, just like investments here in Montgomery County don't just help the people who live here in Montgomery County, but provide economic opportunities for people in other counties and other jurisdictions here in Maryland. So I hope that we can, work collectively on these goals and really deliver strong transportation systems, and especially public transportation systems that help all Marylanders get to good paying work and to education opportunities.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a really good point. And then one last question, one final question. This is for Mr. Luedtke, who we share a biographical fact. Before, in past lives, we were both MCPS teachers.
Three of the 6 of us up here were MCPS teachers. So.
That's true, of course. Yeah, County Executive Elrich, fantastic. So we know that schools are a top issue for everyone who lives in the county. I mean, it's core to our economic competitiveness, to our sense of justice, to our sense of opportunity, sort of the moral vision of what it is to live in this county. So could you give us a little update on what things are going to look like as the governor implements the blueprint for Maryland's future? Talk to us a little bit about his plan for service year, which he talked a lot about during the campaign, and then just sort of a general education policy update, what things are going to look like, and how that's going to land specifically on Montgomery County.
All that?
Yeah, all of that as quickly as possible so we can get Marjorie back up here.
Look, the governor-elect was clear earlier during his speech. The Moore-Miller administration is going to fund the blueprint for Maryland's future. But the administration's not going to stop there. And first of all, I want to take a step back and say one of the wonderful things about the blueprint, and the reason why it is such a powerful tool for making a better future for our kids, is that so many different people were involved in crafting it, right? PTA members, educators, superintendents, folks from MCEA here in Montgomery County, members of the county council. The chairman of the Accountability and Implementation Board created by the blueprint is Montgomery County's own Ike Leggett. So the blueprint got the best minds in Maryland education together in a room and said, how do you make Maryland schools not just best in the nation, but best in the world? And the blueprint is the product. The Moore-Miller administration backs it completely, but also believes that there are things we can accelerate and things we can continue to work on. And I'll call out 2 in particular. First of all, the governor-elect mentioned during his speech the issue of access to child care and pre-K, which is a commitment that the blueprint has made, and it's an important commitment, but we need to double down on that commitment. And both him and the lieutenant governor-elect have been clear on the campaign trail. It's not just a question of educational opportunity. You talk to any of the business owners in this room, and they will tell you it's a workforce problem. If people don't have access to high-quality, affordable childcare, they can't go to work. So it's important for our economy, too. And the last thing I'll say in reference to service, you know, the governor-elect, and I will tell you, and it's not just because I work for him now, so I have to say nice things about him. He's the real deal, right? He's doing this because he has a deep-seated sense of service to his community and his country. That's why he served in the 82nd Airborne. It's why he's done the anti-poverty work he's done. It's why he ran for governor. The idea behind this service year option is incredibly exciting, and we would be the first state in America to do something like it. To give every high school graduate in the state of Maryland the option, if they would like to do a year of service, but not just service that for the sake of service, right? Service that actually addresses real needs in the community. Service that gives students opportunity to explore potential career pathways. And so it's important for educational reasons. It's important because it will bolster our incredible nonprofit sector that does incredible work around the state. But it's also important, and if you hear the governor-elect talk about it, it's important for the soul of this nation, right? We have been through a very difficult, divisive time with everything we've gone through as a country. And the governor-elect has this line he uses: service is sticky, right? Service is sticky. When you teach young people that service is important, it sticks with them, and they get more deeply committed to building a better society. And the governor-elect believes that through this program, we can begin to help heal some of these divisions we've seen in our state and our country over the past few years. So I hope I didn't go on too long. That's what you're looking for, Samir?
That was precisely what I was
Fantastic.
Yeah. Just a delight. So I actually, my great fortune, I get to ask 2 more questions. We have a little more time, so lovely. So let's go back to Senator Kramer real quick, if we can. I was reading a Josh Kurtz piece, I think, the other day that highlighted that highlighted some numbers about the county, and it's I think well known. 58% non-white. Our school system, 70% non-white, incredibly diverse county. And we've seen recently a sort of uptick in hate-motivated, bias-motivated activity, anti-Semitic activity, even broadly within the culture. Can you tell us a little bit about what action to counter this or to meet this challenge could look like at the state level?
Yeah, wow, thank you for that question. And folks, unless you have been living on a remote mountaintop in the Himalayas somewhere, it is not lost on anyone in this room that hate is on the rise. Very sadly, hate was unleashed by the immediate past president of this country. It had never gone away, it never does. It just seeks its opportunity to bubble to the surface and make its presence known. And that's where we are right now at this point in time. Whether it's Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, race hate, violence against our new American community, it is on the rise, and I personally look at it from the perspective that we have the haters. There's nothing we can do about that other than look them in the eye and not blink. But so much of what we are dealing with is a consequence of ignorance. Those who do not know any better. Social media is feeding this frenzy of ignorance with regard to who we are, who our neighbors are, and I think it is incumbent upon our elected officials to not just talk about it. We know it's there. I think we need to act on it. And that is a perfect question, so I appreciate it, because this past week I was meeting with the President of the Senate to discuss the prospect of working with our new governor, working with our colleagues in the House to address through a package of bills, educate to stop the hate, because we need to make sure that we are not failing our next generation by getting them to know the facts, to know how important it is for all of us to appreciate the diversity that exists here in Montgomery County, in Maryland, in our nation. And I truly hope that working with all of you in this room, working with our local government officials, working with the Moore administration, that we are going to move this issue forward this coming legislative session so that we're not just talking about it, we're going to be about it, and we're actually going to make a difference. So thank you for that very important question.
Okay, now actually 2 more questions. So, Councilmember Friedson, talk to us about what's happening in the housing world, and in particular, what kind of support we can look for from the state.
Thanks for the question. Housing is a huge issue. I think we all recognize that it is impossible to afford to live in Montgomery County. People who could afford to live here 30 years ago can't live with the same job in the same place than they could have. And we have to address that issue. We've been doing a lot at the county level. I'm proud of the fact that we've created a new $100 million housing production fund, leveraging bonds. And Hans Riemer is clapping very loudly in the back because we partnered on that effort together. We work with the county executive to increase the Housing Initiative Fund, our primary tool to fund affordable housing, to a total of $184 million with everything involved. a number that we couldn't even have imagined 4 years ago. And we worked together on that. But we need help. We need support. In Virginia, they have a specialized fund for Northern Virginia, recognizing that the housing needs in Northern Virginia are unique and are different to the rest of the state. I really do think we need something similar in Montgomery County, leveraging 9% tax credits and other competitive grants that are hard to compete between Montgomery County and the Eastern Shore and Western Maryland, where the housing market and the housing crisis is very different there. We could model similarly to what they do with Prince George's and Montgomery County in the capital region and have something similar. We need a huge amount of increased support for rental relief. During COVID, we had a massive amount of federal infusion of capital and some state infusion of capital to address rent relief for the rent burden, the tremendous rent burden that our residents face. The county can't fund that moving forward. We just don't have the resources to do that. We need the state to do that. There's a request, a statewide request for $175 million, of which we need Montgomery County to get a proportionate share, a fair share of that funding, which would be significant. But that $175 million needs to be funded, and we know that there is some interest in that. So we can't address the housing crisis alone in Montgomery County. We can't do it without the state. We need significant support. But we also have to do our part in the county as well. I know we'll continue to move forward on that. And I'm pleased to be chairing the Housing and Planning Committee on the new council to be able to work with colleagues on those issues. There's a broad commitment, you heard from Council President Glass, that we're focused on these issues, but certainly the county can't do it alone, and we need to be working collaboratively with the state. I know with the new Moore Miller administration, they're committed to doing that as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And last question for this panel. I'm particularly interested in hearing the county executive's take here. Last election, we had a ballot question on cannabis. Blowout, an absolute blowout. And so, of course, this year in Annapolis, the Assembly is going to be taking up the question of how to stand up, how to license, how to regulate cannabis across the state. And so what I'm curious about is, from the county perspective, what are the really important priorities that the state needs to keep in mind, both from a business development perspective and from a sort of public health, public safety perspective? And our time is drawing near, and I want to give everybody a chance, anybody who has anything to say about this a chance, so let's do just a quick answer, and then anybody else can pipe in with 1 or 2 sentences, and then we'll wrap up.
So a couple of things. I'm totally in favor of this legislation. Would have been in favor of it 50 years ago. And I'm not the only one in this room, so let's be real about this. But the important thing is, I think the state should ban advertising. You look at what's being done in California and Washington State, and you see the advertising. Nobody should be telling you how high you can get and how whack you can get. It should be just like, I got a store. That should be the extent of the advertising. It should be as mild as what we do with our liquor department, and no more than that. The state's got to be reasonable. They got to be reasonable about pricing, because if they overprice it, they will drive people back to the black market. And so you don't want them in the black market. I will tell you, in a state store, you're not going to run into, or a state licensed store, you're not going to run into the dealer who's got a pocket full of other things you want to sell. You put these people on the street to get drugs, somebody's going to have multiple things they want to sell them, and you don't want kids and you don't want adults getting exposed to that unnecessarily. So we ought to closely control, and I will put a pitch in for this. If the feds legalize it and take it off Schedule 1 so people can do banking, you really ought to think about letting counties opt for the same system we have for liquor. Let us have controlled stores where nobody's got an incentive to oversell, where the profits would come back to the county, where we could fund social programs, educational programs, and do good, where it wouldn't be taking business away from anybody who's got business today. We would capitalize on a business and be able to make major investments in this county that we all talk about the reasons we need more money here. This would give us a source of revenue that we could do good things with.
And let's jump in, give anybody else a chance. If you have 2 sentences to share on the matter, tell us what you think. Just run down the line if you have something to say.
What was the specifics about the cannabis question?
Yeah, what do you think should be our biggest priorities, particularly focused on supporting Montgomery County's interests or our residents' interests as we stand up a legal cannabis industry?
So I will share with all of you, the cannabis legislation comes to the committee that I serve on, and I have been one of a small handful of members in the Senate working on this issue, and my focus and priority has been on the relevance and importance of public safety. How are we going to address impaired driving if we legalize recreational use of cannabis? How are we going to address the significant problem of secondhand smoke exposure, particularly for our residents in multi-unit dwellings? It's an issue now with tobacco. We'll be doubling down on that with cannabis. And of course, the public health side of what it is that we will be doing going forward with the legalization. So there's a lot of discussion, a lot of conversation, and looking forward to working again with all of you, working with our folks here in the county. And if I can take a quick pause, I have to do this because we're talking about Montgomery County and things that are important to Montgomery County. I see former Treasurer Nancy Kopp sitting right here. Folks, I will share with you, she spent years as both a member of the legislature, but also as the treasurer, making sure Montgomery County got everything we possibly could in the way of funding for the needs we had here in Montgomery County. So thank you very much for your public service.
I would add that we need to make sure that we set up the licensing in an equitable and fair way. We certainly should have learned a lot from the mistakes of medical cannabis. Minority-owned businesses were effectively shut out of that system. We need to make sure that we don't repeat that mistake this time.
Well, I'm not going to pretend that I have the level of experience on this topic as the county executive does, but I support it. I think we have to be equitable, and I think we've learned some lessons here from prior mistakes of the past. And I think that it's important that we address all the issues that Senator Kramer referenced, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. It just means we have to do it in a thoughtful way, in a reasonable way, in an equitable way. But we have to be really intentional because it is hard to get the toothpaste back in the tube. So once this rolls out, once licenses go out, it's hard to take licenses away. So we have to make sure they are being done in an equitable way. We have to make sure that there are safety concerns that are addressed. I personally don't believe that the county should regulate it and distribute it. I don't think that's a good model. But we need to be really thoughtful and really serious about some of the challenges that this presents, and I do think that the cost dynamic is important. We don't talk enough about the fact that there is a black market for tobacco that we don't do a very good job of addressing nationally, and so we have to make sure that we're addressing that as well. And we're also going to face an issue, by the way, at the county level on workplace issues. If you have a legal substance, what's the threshold at which you can, your past behavior, what's the threshold at which, you go to work. And so all of those things are going to have to be fleshed out at the state level to help us to manage this as we move forward.
Samir, I'm going to be blunt. Won't get in the weeds.
It's high time.
My wife is groaning louder than the rest of you, don't worry. I will just reemphasize and underline what Delegate Palakovich Carr said. Yes, it is important that we get public safety right, public health right, that we get all of the details of regulation right. But on this issue, above or alongside all of those other things, we have to acknowledge the fact that the drug war was disproportionately prosecuted on Black and brown Marylanders. And there is no equitable version of this that does not create opportunity for Black and brown Marylanders to own licenses and businesses.
Great final thoughts. Thank you all for such an enriching discussion. I know I appreciate it. I hope everyone in the room did too. And as we head into the session, go out there and bring home the bacon. Let's do it. Thank you very much.
We have one more round of applause for our panel, please. Thank you. Well, this wraps up our breakfast. I wanted to be sure to recognize members of the school board. Anyone still here, would they please rise? Yeah, thanks. Thanks. You guys were supposed to stand when we said elected officials, but I wanted to make sure. Thank you very much. Look forward to a great session this year and see you next year at our breakfast. Thanks for coming.